Greetings, lovers of lore. Thank you for joining me for the second installment of the Duskmourn House of Horror story. This part of the story starts with our heroes having just entered Duskmourn. Kaito and the Wanderer take the lead. You have Zamon in the middle brandishing the techno scanner that Niv Mizzet has provided, and taking up the rear are Tyvar and Nico. After all of these individuals had entered Duskmourn, the doorway back to Ravnica had quietly vanished, leaving them all unsettled. They carefully trod the dust-lined hallway. The faded wallpaper gave way to peeling velour covered in green and gray moths that gave the party a sensation of being watched. Zamon stopped for a moment. Nashi's drones had showed this as one long hallway, but everyone could see branching halls from where they stood. Kaito pointed out that they didn't know if this place could rearrange itself when they weren't looking, so everyone needed to make sure that someone can always see you, he cautioned the party. They looked for signs of Nashi's passing. There were no visible signs, but Kaito detected slight changes to the air that told him someone had been here recently. The Wanderer found a picture that showed a family of 3. The 2 parents' faces had been scratched out, but the teenage daughter's face was untouched. Nico spoke up, having experienced navigating labyrinths on Theros. We keep to the right and always turn right. That's how we track where we've been. That only changes if we end up back where we started. Zamon scanned the photo with her device, and then they headed onwards. The layout of this place was pure madness. They went from kitchens to bedrooms, conservatories that all connected with no rhyme or reason. One room had a swimming pool, grossly filled with murk water and covered in flowers the color of rotting flesh. They came to a set of giant glass doors worked with metal moths. Beyond it was a fun fair with tents and wooden constructs surrounded by corn. Somehow, this was all inside the house. The corn rustled, but there was no breeze. This place was a seeming impossibility. The Wanderer insisted they leave this place immediately. Nico objected, but was overruled and left muttering. They walked back the way they came, but after passing by the Murkwater pool, they found themselves in a cobweb-filled ballroom where there should have been a pantry. Kaito suggested going to the rooftop to get a better view, but the Wanderer reminded him that he had said they always needed to be in view of each other, and Zamon rightly pointed out that there was no guarantee that Kaito could even return the way that he left. The Wanderer told the others this house was massive. She had lost her planeswalker spark, but she could still feel the blind eternities, and she could feel the wrongness of this place. This house is the only thing here. It's limitless. She urged the party to return to where the door back to Ravnica was, and they agreed. They would try and find that missing door. They had barely taken a step when a scream rung out begging for help. Tyvar's innate heroism kicked in, and he raced off in the direction it came from. Zamon followed, intending to bring him back. She caught up to him, but there was the sound of glass shattering, and when the two looked about, there was no one there to save. Zamon insisted they return to the rest of the party, but the ballroom was gone. In its place, another wall covered in moth wallpaper. The sound of glass shattering had actually been Nico's attempt to stop Zamon. The house had warped its own existence to thwart his magic and separate the party. Nico, Kaito, and the Wanderer resolved to find their friends and headed towards the doorway. Kaito went first, and before he made it through the door, the floor ripped open into a hole with jagged teeth. Kaito barely managed to drive his sword into the side of the floor before he plunged into the darkness. The Wanderer reached out for him, but the house widened its mouth and Kaito's sword came loose. He fell into the blackness. The Wanderer tensed, preparing to leap after him, but Nico restrained her. Kaito can still planeswalk. he can get out on his own. The Wanderer reluctantly agreed. Back with Tyvar and Zamon, Tyvar was slamming his fists into the wall, bellowing the names of his comrades. Zamon stopped him and pointed out that they were now in a towering, musty library. Their location had changed while their backs were turned. Tyvar used his magic to punch through the wall that had separated them from the others. Behind it, he found a staircase. Zamon was reluctant to leave all these books behind, the knowledge of an entire plane, so she created a spiral of energy that linked her and Tyvar. Tyvar mounted the stairs. The portraits lining the wall became more troubling the higher he went. Regular-looking folk transforming into abominations. It reminded Tyvar too much of the Phyrexian invasion. He found a doorway at the top of the stairs. He checked to make sure he was still tethered to Zamon and stepped through the door, only to end up back in the library. Over with Nico and the Wanderer, things were getting uncomfortable. They traveled through unfamiliar rooms as the air kept getting hotter. They distracted themselves by getting to know each other a little. The Wanderer explained that she had slain Nashi's mother, but Nico rightly pointed out that Phyrexia held the blame for that. They arrived at a frost-covered door. It led to a room filled with skinned bodies hanging from meat hooks. Thankfully, none of these were her companions. None of the bodies were rat folk or human. The meat locker seemed to go on forever. Abruptly, Nico grabbed the Wanderer and pointed at some chains that were moving. Something was up ahead. They readied their weapons. If they weren't so distracted, they might have noticed the hands reaching out for them from behind. As they were grabbed, they spun about. A pale man held his hands up in a warding gesture, releasing them. He pulled out a paper that read, "Utter no sound." It was written in multiple languages. A masked maniac appeared amongst the hanging bodies. It was headed in their direction. The pale stranger brandished a slingshot and sent a ball of bloody hair flying. It smacked into the chains behind the masked stalker, causing it to turn and head towards the sound. The masked stalker stepped into a bear trap that was hidden in the fog and howled in pain. The pale man nodded in satisfaction and motioned for them to follow him. He led them to a polished door. Inside, a cozy fire burned. The pale man spoke. That was a razorkin, a large one that would have easily killed you. Nico asked the stranger's name. "I am Winter. I've lived here my whole life. This house is the entire world. There's nowhere to escape. You belong to Duskmourn now." And that ends the second installment of the Duskmourn House of Horror story. I hope that you enjoyed it. A big thank you to my channel members and patrons for supporting what I'm doing here. If you do enjoy it, you too can become a member or a patron. Thanks for coming by. I'll see you all for the next installment. Go enjoy some other lore on this channel in the meantime, because at the end of the day, lore is life.